So, how did this happen? How did the Smyrna step become so totally dependent upon the ESS, and why was this done? Well, first of all, they could have just replaced the step outright with the ESS, except in Atlanta that usually did not happen. The more normal pattern was for an ESS to be added to an office that already had step. The ESS would usually take over one of the codes in the step, and then the two would coexist for a few years, and then eventually the ESS would be expanded to completely replace the step. Usually this was done because there simply wasn't enough room in the central office to build an ESS big enough to handle all those customers until part of the step was dismantled to make room for the ESS. So first they'd put in an ESS, have it take over one of the codes in the step. That would then make it possible to take out parts of the step that weren't needed anymore, making room for a larger ESS to replace the whole thing. And of course, the number one ESS didn't take up anywhere near as much space as the step equipment. So as we find Smyrna in 1977, most likely the ESS is somewhat dependent upon the step, just because, as it is now, it couldn't handle all those customers anyway. Now, the best information we have says that prior to the installation of the ESS in Smyrna, all the customers were in the step, and the dialing pattern was that certain local calls nearby were dialed on a 7-digit basis, while the entire rest of the Atlanta metro area was reached by dialing a 3 first. The 3 would put it through a tandem. The same pattern is used in Marietta, contemporary with this recording, except for Marietta you have to dial a 6 first, and 6 sends it to good old 4044. A few years back, 6 from Marietta went to the downtown step tandem. I don't know what tandem you got in Smyrna when you dialed 3 prior to the ESS being installed. I didn't live in Atlanta then. Now, one thing Southern Bell doesn't like to do is to have two different sets of dialing instructions in the same locality. A good example of this is Marietta. Originally, Marietta just had a step. And from all Marietta phones, you did have to dial 6 first for the extended local calling area. When the crossbar 5 was added, it really would not have been necessary to dial a 6 first from crossbar 5 lines, but they wanted to make it consistent, and so they set up the crossbar 5 to also require that a 6 be dialed first for calls outside the immediate local calling area. So, to call East Marietta, you could dial 7 digits, but to call downtown, you had to dial a 6 first. Making the crossbar 5 do that turned out to be an unbelievable kludge nightmare, more so than you would ever expect. Not only did it compromise the Marietta crossbar 5's ability to know how to route calls, it also caused all of the long-distance numbers that began with 6 to go through with an extra 4-second delay after you dialed the last digit. This is really unbelievable, and I don't want to do an extended discussion on it here, but here from the Marietta crossbar 5 is a long-distance call to Calhoun, Georgia. It's 1 plus a 629 number. And notice how this call goes through. Hello, I finished dialing the number. Finally. So why the delay? Well, in spite of the fact that I did dial 1 first, indicating that yes, this is a long-distance call, not a local call, not an extended local call, my dialing 1 first gave it no useful information at all. All it could see was a 6, a 2, and a 9, and so it had to delay to see if I was going to dial an 8th digit, not including the 1. The pre-translator had to tell the register to delay another 4 seconds just in case I was calling 6 plus an extended area number beginning with 29. Now the marker can tell whether you dial 1 first, but it doesn't get called until the last digit of the phone number, so it didn't do any good. Unbelievable. And now here's a call to the time, 522-8550. 522 is a large crossbar 5 downtown that almost every office in Atlanta has direct trunks to. But you'll notice how this call goes through.
Fulton National Bank makes all kinds of loans for almost every purpose. Call us or come by. Time, 1:19.
Yes, the MF sounds indicate that it's going through a tandem. Why no direct trunks to the big crossbar 5 in 522? Well, it's because there are other offices in the local calling area that begin with 52 that have a different route. And when you dial 6 plus 522, the Marietta crossbar 5 doesn't see that as 6 plus 522. It sees it as 652. Now, since all of the 52s are not in the same place, it just has to pick a tandem to send them all to and let the tandem sort it out. You'll notice that if I dial 6 plus 520, a vacant code, the call goes through anyway, and we can even see what tandem the Marietta crossbar 5 is using.
Sorry, but we have a problem in completing your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator to help you. This is a recording. 4044. We're sorry, but we have a problem in completing your call as dialed.
Thanks to the kludge to make 6 plus work, the Marietta crossbar 5 could only see the first 2 digits of most local office codes in the Atlanta area, and that had other ramifications as well, because the Marietta crossbar 5 was also used as a tandem from Woodstock, Ackworth, and Dallas, outlying communities, places that could really have used a direct trunk from Marietta to 522, but Marietta couldn't have that. It was a mess. Now, with that experience fresh in their minds, they had to think very carefully about what to do in Smyrna. They could kludge the ESS to make it act like the step, forcing customers to dial a 3 first.
You can't do that! You can't do that! Ah.
Or they could modify the step so that it worked on 7 digits. And I think after having that dreadful experience in Marietta, right next door, it didn't seem so crazy to completely rebuild the originating stage of the Smyrna step to work in this symbiotic way with the ESS. And that's pretty much how it happened. It was sometime in the middle 1970s. So now, from the Smyrna step, let's make some real phone calls. That is, calls that don't go through the ESS. One place we can call that way is Marietta, the 42s. Now, because this is direct control step, and we're calling the same 2 switching entities, that is, the Marietta step and the Marietta crossbar 5 via the step, this is not an especially exciting segment of tape, but it does have a lot of vibrational beauty, and I'd actually recommend listening to this part with headphones. There are some really nice sounds, but you really have to listen for them. It's stuff like this. Anyway, let's cut to the part of the tape where I called the 42s.
Now I'll demonstrate the Marietta office incoming selector, which is located here on level 42, of course. Every level on that selector is vacant except for 422 and 424, which both go into 4-digit trunks to the respective crossbar 5 codes, and 427 and 428, which each go to the step. So now I'll dial 420.
We are sorry. You have reached a number no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again. We are sorry. You have reached a number no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again. We are...
On the day these tapes were made, the 1 level of the Marietta incoming selector went to reorder consistently, even when the vacant level recording wasn't busy. let's call an actual busy signal in the step. That's a fairly atypical step busy signal sound. Actually, that sort of echo effect that you hear is really heard more often on number 1 crossbar. Here's a regular ring in the Marietta step. The double ring in the Marietta step sounds kind of cool because you can hear the crossbar 5 ringing machine in the background right at the beginning and end of each ring burst.
Okay, now some calls to the crossbar 5, 422, and 424.
The number you have reached, 424-7912, has been disconnected. 424-7912 has been disconnected.
Special operator, may I help you?
Yeah, what's the story on this number?
424-7912.
Yeah.
That number has been disconnected. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sir?
Thank you very much.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome. I'm sorry. Bye-bye. Special operator.
There are two ways to get a reorder from the Marietta Crossbar 5 that I know about. One is to call in and include as one of the last 4 digits a digit that has 11 pulses in it. That will cause the system to actually call the trouble recorder and drop a trouble card. It'll make some distinctive little noises, then we'll get a reorder. And now the tree-saving way to get a reorder. Just call in to the Crossbar 5, dialing the first 3 digits, and let it time out. The background noise on this trunk is kind of interesting, especially the city busy signal sound, which sort of comes in and out at regular intervals, and I don't know why. Electromechanical bell system switches always let you hear the phone line. If the line is humming, you can tell while it's ringing. Here's another ringing number. This is not so much of a hummy line. You have the interplay of 2 background busy signals on this particular call. One of them is associated with the ring power supply in Marietta, and the other one just seems to be on the trunk between here and Marietta. Wow, there was all sorts of stuff going on in there. Now here's a busy from the Crossbar 5 in Marietta. There's sort of a crackly, crisp sound to it, which is very typical for Crossbar 5. There's a certain number group in the 424 exchange that goes to a 770 PBX. That's a crossbar PBX that the Bell system installed a lot.
The sound of the thing, line link pulsing, was abnormal.
Yes, we didn't get the usual line link pulsing noise clearly, and I actually tried it 3 times from the rotary dial coin phone. Couldn't get it to sound like it usually does. So here are 2 calls to that same PBX in 424 from the touch-tone phone. Okay, now back to the rotary dial phone from Smyrna. We're going to call the number that goes through a call diverter in Marietta. There were some private companies that used these devices, which would answer a ringing phone line and then connect it to another phone line on which it had just dialed out a phone number. But the primary business that used call diverters was not a private company, but telephone repair service in the local phone companies. The line this call goes out on is a number 5 crossbar line in Marietta. It goes to a number in downtown Atlanta that is served by a rather large ESS office. Unfortunately, though, it's the ESS office which has the codes 523, 524, and 525, and because it begins with 52, the Marietta Crossbar 5 has to send it through a tandem because it can't see the 3rd digit of the phone number. It only sees 652, so this call does go through good old Atlanta 2. And 20 seconds after the destination number hangs up, we of course will get a dial tone from the line the call diverter is using to make the call. If we had a touch-tone phone, we could dial something.
Would you hold the line 1 second, please? Your call is being transferred to night repair service. Thank you.
Good evening, telephone repair service.
Yeah, reporting 435-9471.
Is this a payphone?
Yes, it is.
Where is it located?
It's at a Tenneco store on Hargrove Street and Cobb Parkway.
Hargrove and
Cobb Parkway.
Cobb Parkway. What's the trouble with it?
Well, I tried to make a call with it and I lost 10 cents. So, I put the money and didn't get a dial tone.
And did you get your coin back?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Is it on the inside or outside?
It's outside.
Okay, then thank you for reporting it. We will have it cleared by 2 p.m. tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This is the noise of the T-carrier trunk from the Marietta Crossbar 5 to 4044. But the outgoing line is about to time back to dial tone, and the dial tone is going to be completely crisp and clear because it's coming through the wire trunk from Smyrna to Marietta. There's just nothing digital here, so the dial tone sounds great. I had to stay on the line for a minute because I half expected that same guy who did the call diverter announcement to say something like, "Would you hang up your telephone, please? Thank you." And to hear that long dial tone with no digital fuzz in it is kind of cool. You know, it's funny, in the 1960s, they invented a whole new set of telephone tones that sounded really nice. And then they invented T-carrier to make those same tones sound all fuzzy. So there was this golden age beginning in the late 60s and ending sometime in the early 90s where you actually did hear pure modern tones, and it's been kind of fuzzy ever since. And speaking of wire trunks that let you hear the tones clearly, the Smyrna office is actually one of very few in the Atlanta area that is so close to its outgoing toll building that it actually has wire trunks to the switching machines that you get when you dial 1 and 0. Here from a Smyrna touchtone phone is 1 followed by a local number. Since 1 plus local is not a correct dialing procedure, we will get a recording from the Step-ESS system. At the end of the recording, there's a reorder tone which is coming from the northwest building, and it's going to sound really good because it's on a wire trunk rather than T-carrier.
I'm sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please hang up and consult your directory. 404-7U99. I'm sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please hang up and consult your directory. 404-7U99.
that was fairly pleasant to listen to. The modern tone reorder with all that step crosstalk in the background. No T-carrier fuzz. Now as for that recording ID,
404-7U99.
that just shows you how the Bell system was not exactly standardized on their recording IDs for TSPS recordings. Even in the Atlanta area, they weren't consistent. There were 3 TSPSs serving Atlanta. The one downtown had a similar ID.
I'm sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed. Will you please hang up and consult your directory 404-7U19.
That's 7U19 versus 7U99. But then the third one in the Atlanta area, in the Rockdale building, just sounded like this.
I'm sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed. Will you please hang up and consult your directory?
As you can hear, no recording ID, but Les used to constantly make fun of that recording. He thought the guy sounded so old that, in effect, he was saying,
I'm sorry, but I'm dead.
In December 1971, the Rockdale TSPS recording sounded like this.
I'm sorry, the number you have dialed is a local number and cannot be completed as dialed. Will you please hang up and consult your directory?
I don't remember what I dialed to get that, but it wasn't a local number. Might have been 0 plus 555-1212. In 1974, Ben recorded this recording from Dallas.
I'm sorry, we are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording, TSPS 2.
Meanwhile, New York City had 2 TSPSs. One of them had no ID. The other recording was this.
I am sorry. We are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again or ask your operator for assistance. Thank you. This is a recording, 21270.
Interesting that they gave it 21270 at a time when the regular recording IDs in New York City ranged from
2122
all the way to
21253.
Since we have nice wire trunks from Smyrna to the TSPS, let's dial 0 and ask the operator for the rate to a distant place. On this particular example, the operator doesn't have the information at hand, so she needs to call another operator to get the information. Now what's funny about this is that in the early 1970s, when the Bell system was almost entirely using cord boards for outgoing long-distance assistance, it was actually more automated then than it is now. In the early 1970s, if the operator needed to use the automated rate quote system, she would plug into a trunk to the local tandem, key the code 009, and then the computer would answer with a flash and a tone. Since the operator was using an MF key set that actually made the tones, she could then key more information directly into the computer. And so she could key the area code and prefix being called from, and the area code and prefix being called to, and the computer would come back with the rate step. Now, TSPS being a more modern system presented a problem for using the rate quote system, because the operator, instead of having an MF key set, had a set of keys that basically talked directly to the switch. It was no problem to call the rate quote system by dialing 009. But then when it answered, there was no way for the operator to communicate with it since she didn't have an MF key set to send the tones down the line. At the time this recording was made in October 1977, they came up with a temporary fix for this, and so here's what's going to happen. My TSPS operator that I get when I dial 0, instead of calling the rate quote system, she's going to call another operator, who happens to have a cord board. The second operator will call the rate quote system, and then when the tone is heard, our first operator will tell the second operator what to key into the system. And that's the way they handled it for a while. Sort of a kludge, but it worked. On this particular example, the cord board operator, the second one, makes a mistake the first time.
you.
Yes, I need to know the rate to area code 516593 if I call station to station from here.
Thank you. From a corner station, be 215 for 3 minutes.
Okay, one more rate. Could you tell me the rate to area code 703987?
Thank you.
the dime to get the dial tone. So you dial 1, 305, and the number you gave. The dime will
703-987-404-435. Check number, please. You did say 703-987?
Yep.
No. Okay. Okay. Put the dial and then you automatically dial 1, 305.
703-987-404-435. 1, 2, rate. Station from McCorn be 215 for 3 minutes.
How much would the overtime be now?
How much the overtime would be?
Yeah.
We don't have it computed out, sir, when you from a payphone for each additional minute.
Okay.
It looked like it would go about 20 cents.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You might have noticed there were a lot of crossbar 5 tandeming sounds on that call to the operator who used the rate quote system. The first operator keys, I believe, 000 to reach the second one, who is in Cartersville, Georgia, which just happens to be served by a crossbar 5 tandem. So you hear a crossbar 5 tandem noise going into that second operator, and then again when she keys out. And of course she's calling 009, which ends up going down to a special crossbar 5 tandem switch in the Ivy Street downtown building that was used for special functions, primarily CCSAs, the Bell system provided private networks for private companies. But the rate quote system was in there too, and that's why you hear so many crossbar 5 tandeming sounds. If you don't know what I mean, the Long Distance series, especially Part 6, explains that. Now by 1979, they had come up with a better solution to the problem of TSPS, the more modern system, not being able to use the RQS because the operator couldn't MF directly into the trunk. The problem was you first had to call the system up, and then you had to send MFs down the line so that it would hear them. Well, it just so happens there's another part of the network that works the same way as that, and that is international calling. When TSPS makes an international call, first it has to get into the international gateway, and then it has to send tones down the line so that the gateway hears them. Well, they decided to set up a kludge so that the operators could use the rate quote system by dialing a pseudo-international call. At least that's the way Southern Bell did it. From the 404 area, the TSPS operator would dial 011 plus 114, and then whatever digits were appropriate to send after that, usually the prefix you were calling from, then the area code and prefix you were calling to. That would then enable TSPS to first call the rate quote system, wait for the flash, and then send that second part. And in that way they were able to eliminate the need for an old-fashioned cordboard operator to act as digit stenographer for the TSPS operator. Once they got the automated way of doing this up and running, you would hear something like this.
4, 2, rate, step 4, 2.
And by the way, here's what the RQS would say if you asked it for the rate between 2 points that happened to be local.
Local, no charge.
Well, that's it for this segment, but there are more recordings made from the Smyrna Step. In the next segment, we'll make the rest of our regular old real step phone calls, first making the intra-office calls, numbers beginning with 43, and then we'll go through the test codes, which in this office all began with 41. The test code selector is a little bit Well, let's just say it's a work in progress, except that it's never going to be finished. That's next.